yesterday I thought maybe Donald Trump might have trumped the shark, if you will, with his anti-Semitic comments, or certainly comments that were grossly stereotypical and offensive towards Jews at the Republican Jewish Coalition, where he said, you guys like to renegotiate deals. Hey, this room knows. You're all renegotiators. You know what I'm saying? It's like, Jesus Christ, that's bad. But no, it turns out his comments about Muslims, of all people, are what has gotten him into more trouble. And that's because they are so over the top, and that even the darkest, most right-wing person on the planet, or at least here in the United States, it's like, whoa, he went too far. So we'll get to that in a second. First, let's show you what the comments are.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice.
Now, I mean, he doesn't want to do it, but the poor guy doesn't have any choice. The Muslims made him do it. In case you're wondering, now come on, now he can't mean total and complete ban, right? No, he means even more. So when asked to clarify, he explained, yes, not only refugees, no way, they're gone. Not just Syrian refugees, all refugees who are Muslim, gone. Anyone seeking asylum, gone. Anyone seeking a green card, gone. Visas, gone. Tourists, gone. You're Muslim, you want to come to the United States to do business, to vacation? No, gone. Okay, wait, it gets worse. How about Muslim Americans? Like you went on a business trip and then you're coming back. Gone. What? They're U.S. citizens. Nope, not going to allow them back in the country. Oh, come on, man, you can't mean that. He's like, yeah, I mean that. I said, I don't want to do it, but what can I do? This is insanity. Now, I want to read you more from his statement that he read to that crowd. Now, I'm going to repeat the first thing that he said there because I'm amazed that the last part is in print. So this is the press release that he sent to the whole country. He said, Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims, as he says, entering the United States until this is the part that amazes me, until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on. What kind of standard is that? Like, it's one thing, like, if you see him talking, you're like, oh, he must have just said that in the middle. He's worked up, the crowd's worked up, and he's like, until we figure out what the hell's going on, you know what I mean? No, they wrote it down in the press release. Until our country's representatives can figure out what's going on. When would that be? This is a child, but a scary, like, Chucky's Bride kind of child. So now the rest, this is interesting. The rest of the statement. He says, according to Pew Research, citing polls here. Some in other circles might like this. Among others, there is great hatred towards Americans by large segments of the Muslim population. Most recently, a poll from the Center for Security Policy released data showing 25% of those agreed that violence against Americans here in the United States is justified as part of the global jihad, and 51% polled agreed that Muslims in America should have the choice of being governed according to Sharia. So the word Sharia scares the hell out of people here in the West, so he throws that in there, and then he goes, polls. I feel like I've seen that somewhere else before. No, I got to do it to all Muslims. Now, all of a sudden, this is not a thought experiment. This is real. This is the leading contender on the Republican side proposing this as a very real policy to apply to all Muslims, including U.S. citizens. All of a sudden, we're not thinking anymore. We're not experimenting it. We're doing it if Trump wins. He says at the end, until we're able to determine and understand this problem and the dangerous threat that it poses, our country cannot be the victims of horrendous attacks by people that believe only in jihad and have no sense of reason or respect for human life. Now, wait a minute. When we're talking about radical Islamists, no one disagrees with that. But you're not banning radical Islamists. If you got information on radical Islamists, let's go arrest them. Grab them at the airport if they're trying to come into the U.S. Do whatever you got to do with law enforcement. Now, he's talking about all Muslims and generalizing to they only believe in jihad. See, well, this is exactly how fascism starts, and it's exactly the opposite of what America's supposed to stand for. Religious belief should be free in this country. I'm pretty sure that's in the First Amendment. Now, to give you a sense of how far he has gone, the Sith Lord himself, Dick Cheney, has said that he's gone too far. Listen.
Well, I think this whole notion that somehow we can just say no more Muslims, just ban a whole religion, goes against everything we stand for and believe in. I mean, religious freedom's been a very important part of our history and where we came from. A lot of people here, my ancestors got here because they were Puritans. There wasn't anybody here then when they came, but it's a mistaken notion.
Dude, when Darth Cheney's calling you out for being too right-wing, you've gone way, way too far. So I think, you never know though, this might be the beginning of the end. And I'm slightly heartened to see even Dick Cheney, even Republicans, as right-wing as they are, and the media finally saying, apparently there is some bottom of the barrel. We might have reached it. This is a bridge too far. Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House. I mean, those are important positions. He doesn't normally comment. He did in this case. And now, the media. Will the media turn on him? That's very important. Well, first we go to CNN, Chris Cuomo, pretty much yelling at him. Let's watch.
You have galvanized political rivals, all saying this is un-American and extreme and that it makes you a fascist. How do you respond?
Well, I totally disagree. You take a look, Chris, at what's going on, and it is disgraceful. First of all, people quickly forget World Trade Center 1, World Trade Center number 2.
Here, what you're doing in the country that is known as a symbol of freedom is saying we're too afraid to be inclusive. We're going to reject the promise of America and ban an entire religion, even though we need to do things on a case-by-case basis. And it seems as though you're acting out of fear, not making us look strong, and rejecting what America is all about. UK's not doing this. France isn't doing this.
Chris, and don't tell me about Paris. Paris is under tremendous siege.
What tears at America's fabric more than rejecting an entire faith in the land of religious freedom?
You have a large portion of people from Syria that are Christian. Why aren't we allowing the Christians in? We only allow the Muslims in.
That's not true.
Why aren't we allowing the Christians in?
That's just not true. Does it matter to you that it's not true?
It is largely true because the percentage is massively in favor of the Muslims.
Well, you have a massive Muslim population.
If we're letting in, why aren't we letting the Christians in? Why are we letting the Muslims in?
You tell me. You're saying no. You're the one saying no. You tell me. Why aren't we letting them in?
Well, I guess Obama set a policy or something.
No, he didn't set a policy. He is letting them in.
By somebody in the administration.
No, it's just not true. It's just not true.
If you happen to be a Christian in Syria, it's almost impossible to come into this country.
Look,
if you're a Muslim, you can get in.
Nonsense through and through, not true. Plus, what does that mean? Everybody forgot about World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2. No, nobody forgot about that. We're just not proposing a fascist solution to that many, many years later. So, but you got to understand the importance of this. Some of you might think, like CNN calling out Donald Trump, that's not that big a deal. No, you're wrong. It is a big deal. Because CNN calls everything 50-50. No, I got to be balanced. I can't offend the Republicans. For them to say over and over again what you're saying is not true, committing acts of journalism like that, it's very unusual. For him to say you're being weak, you're tearing at America's fabric, on CNN, saying that about the leading Republican contender, that's unheard of. But he's gone so far that their hand was forced. Now, he didn't get a very friendly audience at Fox News either. Here's Greta Van Susteren.
Donald, you've issued a statement that there should be a complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. Is that your view?
Absolutely. We have problems going on. Nobody wants to talk about the problems.
Donald, what about the members of our U.S. military who are Muslims who are serving overseas tonight? What do you say to them? They want to come home.
They'll come home, and we have to be vigilant, and we have to take care of the Muslims that are living here, but we have to be vigilant. I have Muslim friends, Greta, and they're wonderful people.
Does it apply to your friends? Does this apply to your Muslim friends, this complete shutdown?
This does not apply to people living in the country, except that we have to be vigilant.
No, wait a minute. So the only way that it doesn't apply is if you're a Muslim American and you still live in the country and never leave. But if you leave, it does apply to you. In fact, even with Muslim Americans who are troops, as Greta Van Susteren is pointing out, if you get stationed abroad in Iraq, Afghanistan, fighting ISIS, he said, we're going to have to be vigilant when you're returning. In other words, I'm not saying you can return. You might not be able to return. That's beyond insanity. I mean, for Fox News to call Donald Trump out, you've got to be beyond insane. And look at the things he says. He said in another case, very similar to what he was saying to Greta Van Susteren when he was talking to NBC News. He said, I have friends that are Muslims. They're great people, but they know we have a problem. My country has a problem. It is the Muslim. Throw the Muslim down the well. It's not that much more sophisticated than that. So now I saved the best for last. That's Joe Scarborough. Now, Scarborough was on MSNBC, but no one represents the establishment and the Republican point of view better than Joe Scarborough. This is Washington's toxic stew. Whatever they say is cool, they're like, oh yeah, it's great, right? If they say something's not cool, whoa, you have breached civility, and we've got a real issue here. And listen to what Scarborough did to Trump.
We have to be very smart and very vigilant. We have to find out who gave this guy $28,000, put it in his account. How many other $28,000 checks were made? Are there thousands all over the country? When you say you're afraid, I think you should be afraid. You should be afraid of the other side, not my side.
Well,
I want to get our hands around a very difficult situation.
All right, Donald.
And Joe, one other thing.
Don. You got to let us ask questions. You can't just talk. No, you got to let us actually ask questions. You're just talking. All Muslims. Donald, you're not going to keep talking. We will go to break. If you keep talking, we're going to ask you questions.
All
right, go to break. Go to break, everybody. Go to break. Go to break. Go to break right now. We'll be right back with more Morning Joe.
For Scarborough, a former Republican that does nothing but 3 hours of right-wing talking points every morning, to tell the leading Republican presidential candidate, I'm cutting you off. We're going to break. I'm done with you. That's, in essence, the Washington establishment saying to Donald Trump, we're done with you. Now, we'll see if that holds, and we'll see if it matters. Maybe the Republican voters are like, yeah, that's your opinion, man, but we still like the guy, and we don't like him despite the fact that he said that thing about Muslims and how outrageous it is and how unconstitutional it is and how un-American it is. We like him because he said that thing about Muslims. So we'll see. We'll see. It goes to the voters next. We'll start looking at the polls. But this is en masse the right-wing Republicans and the D.C. establishment saying, you have trumped the shark. It's over. You got to clean up and go home. Now, is Trump going to do that? Not unless someone physically removes him from the building. So the only person who could do that is Republican voters. Now let's see what they do.